I thought I had married a man I could trust. For 10 years, I stood by his side, through thick and thin, believing we were a team. But one morning, everything changed. I woke up to check my bank account, expecting to see the savings we had been building for years, money meant for our dream home, our future. Instead, my heart nearly stopped. The balance was zero. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. But then I checked the transaction history, and my blood ran cold. Every single dollar had been transferred to my husband. I called him immediately, my hands shaking, my voice barely steady. "Where is our money?" I demanded. His response, a casual, "I needed it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." He had wiped out my entire savings, and I wasn't supposed to worry? My stomach twisted in knots as I tried to comprehend the betrayal. How could the man I trusted with my life do this to me? And what was he even planning to do with all that money? Before I could figure out my next move, karma stepped in faster than I could have imagined. The very next morning, as I sat drowning in my fury and heartbreak, my husband received a call that wiped the smug look off his face. It was the IRS, and what they told him, it was worse than he ever could have expected. I met Daniel when I was 25, fresh out of college and ready to take on the world. He was charming, ambitious, and had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the room. We fell fast and hard, and within 2 years we were married. Life wasn't always perfect, but we made it work. At least that's what I thought. For 10 years, I worked tirelessly to build our future. I had a stable career in finance, bringing in a steady income, while Daniel bounced between jobs, always chasing the next big thing. He had dreams of running his own business, and I supported him, even when his ventures failed. I believed in him. After all, that's what marriage is about: trust, loyalty, and standing by each other. We had always kept separate bank accounts but maintained a shared savings account for major expenses, our future home, vacations, emergencies. I contributed most of the money, given my stable income, while Daniel added whenever he could. I never questioned it. I trusted him completely. But over time, small cracks began to appear. Daniel started getting secretive about money, brushing off conversations about his work, and making excuses when I asked about bills. Still, I ignored the red flags. I convinced myself that he was just under stress. That was, until everything came crashing down. One morning, I logged into my bank account as usual, expecting to see our savings. Instead, my stomach dropped. Balance, $0. At first, I thought it had to be a glitch. I frantically clicked through the transaction history, my hands shaking. That's when I saw it. A single, massive transfer. Every dollar gone. And the recipient? Daniel. Panic set in. My mind raced with questions.
Why?
When did this happen? And what was he planning to do with all that money? I called him, barely able to breathe. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. By the time I finally reached him, I was shaking with rage. "Where is our money, Daniel?" His response, a nonchalant shrug. "I needed it. Don't worry about it." I could feel the blood drain from my face. "You needed it? That was our entire savings. What are you talking about?" His tone was calm, too calm. "I'll pay you back." Pay me back? I had worked years for that money. That wasn't some loan he could just brush off. I demanded answers, but Daniel refused to tell me where the money had gone. He acted as if I was the one overreacting, like I had no right to be upset that he had just drained every cent of our future. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But most of all, I wanted to know what he was hiding. And then karma arrived faster than I ever expected. The very next morning, just as I was plotting my next move, Daniel received a phone call. I watched as he picked up, his usual arrogance in place. But within seconds, I saw it. The way his face drained of color. His hand trembled as he held the phone to his ear. It was the IRS, and whatever they told him, it knocked the wind right out of him. Daniel's face went pale as he gripped his phone, listening intently to the person on the other end. His cocky demeanor vanished, replaced by something I had never seen on him before: fear. I crossed my arms, watching him closely. His hand shook slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line. "There must be a mistake," he said into the phone, his voice suddenly tight. "I don't understand. How could this happen?" I had no idea what was being said, but whatever it was, it had Daniel completely rattled. When he finally ended the call, he looked up at me, his expression a mix of anger and panic. "What happened?" I asked, my voice still laced with fury from the night before. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. "Nothing. Just something I need to take care of." I narrowed my eyes. "Something you need to take care of? You emptied our entire savings, refused to tell me why, and now you get a call that shakes you to your core. I think I deserve to know what's going on." Daniel exhaled sharply and paced the room, rubbing his temples. Finally, he stopped and turned to me. "The IRS is auditing me." I frowned. "Auditing you? For what?" His jaw clenched. "For back taxes. Apparently, I owe a lot more than I thought." A chill ran down my spine. Back taxes? Daniel had never mentioned owing the IRS anything. But then again, how much of his financial situation had he really told me? "How much do you owe?" I asked slowly. He hesitated. Too long. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "Daniel." His eyes flickered to mine before dropping. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said it. $50,000. I staggered backward, as if he had physically struck me. 50,000. I repeated in disbelief. "You're telling me you stole our entire savings to cover a tax debt you never told me about?" His eyes flashed. "I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. I was going to figure out a way to get it back." "Are you hearing yourself right now?" I snapped, my voice rising. "That was our money, Daniel. Our future. You didn't even think to tell me." His expression hardened. What was I supposed to do? Let the IRS take everything? I needed the money, and you always have more. I figured. You figured you'd just take it because it was convenient for you? I cut him off, my chest tightening. Like I was your personal bank. His silence was deafening. That's exactly what he had done. My hands curled into fists. "And what were you going to do if I never found out? Just keep lying to me? Keep draining my account behind my back?" He looked away, his jaw tightening. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, I'm sure. And now what? Do you even have a plan, or did you think the IRS would just forget about it?" Daniel didn't answer. That's when I knew. He hadn't thought this through at all. I was furious beyond words. But now there was something else creeping into my mind, fear. If Daniel was in trouble with the IRS, and he had used our savings to try and cover his tracks, what did that mean for me? Were my finances tied to his in any way that could get me into trouble? I needed answers. Fast. Still shaking, I grabbed my laptop and started searching. I wanted to know everything about tax debt, audits, and what this meant for someone like Daniel. If he was hiding this from me, what else was he hiding? Meanwhile, Daniel paced the room like a caged animal, muttering about needing to figure something out. "You better hope you do." I shot at him, my voice sharp. "Because I'm not going down with you." His head snapped toward me, his eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" I slammed my laptop shut and stood. "It means I'm protecting myself, Daniel. You made your choices. Now I have to make mine." His face twisted with something close to betrayal. "You're my wife. You're supposed to stand by me." I let out a humorless laugh. "You mean the way you stood by me when you drained my account and lied about it?" He had nothing to say to that. For the first time in 10 years, I realized something chilling. I had been sharing my life with a man I didn't really know at all. The tension between us was suffocating. Daniel knew he was cornered, but instead of admitting his faults, he doubled down. His panic turned to defensiveness, and soon his words became weapons. "You're acting like I did this to hurt you," he snapped, pacing the living room. I didn't have a choice. The IRS was breathing down my neck. "Do you have any idea what they can do to me if I don't pay up?" I crossed my arms, my fury burning hotter. "And what about what you did to me, Daniel? You had a choice. You could have told me. We could have figured something out together. But no, you decided to rob me blind like some criminal." His eyes flashed. "It's not robbery. We're married. What's yours is mine." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. "Not anymore," I said coldly. "You don't get to play the 'we're married' card when you used our marriage as a cover for theft." Daniel scoffed, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Good. He should be scared. Because I wasn't done. I turned back to my laptop and kept searching. The more I read, the worse it got. If Daniel's tax debt was solely in his name, then legally, I wasn't responsible. But if he had filed jointly, which he had for the last few years, then there was a chance the IRS could come after me too. My stomach churned. I had always let Daniel handle the tax filings because he insisted he knew what he was doing. Now I was terrified to find out the truth. I grabbed my purse and stood up. "Where are you going?" he asked suspiciously. "To a lawyer." That wiped the smugness off his face. "A lawyer?" "Yeah, Daniel. Because I refuse to let your mess become my problem." His expression darkened. "Are you seriously turning on me like this?" I laughed bitterly. "Turning on you? You turned on me the second you drained my account and lied about it." I didn't give him time to argue. I grabbed my keys and walked out, slamming the door behind me. Underscore 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 underscore. At the lawyer's office, reality hit me like a brick wall. Daniel had put me at risk. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Caldwell, laid it out for me. If we filed taxes jointly, I could be held partially responsible for his debt unless I could prove I had no knowledge of his wrongdoing. The term she used was innocent spouse relief. "But here's the issue," she said, flipping through my financial records. "He used your shared savings account to pay the debt. That might complicate things." I felt my hands tighten into fists. "So what do I do?" She leaned forward, her voice firm. "First, separate your finances immediately. Open a new bank account under just your name. Transfer any personal funds, and ensure Daniel has zero access. Second, gather every document proving you were unaware of his financial issues. Third, consider whether you want to remain married to someone who put you in this position." That last part sat heavy in my chest. When I got home, Daniel was waiting for me. His expression was unreadable. "So what did your fancy lawyer say?" he asked mockingly. I tossed a folder of paperwork onto the table. "She said I need to protect myself from you." His face twitched, but he masked it quickly. "Oh, come on, you're overreacting. I took the money to fix a problem, and it's done now. We can move on." I scoffed. "You don't get to decide when we move on, Daniel. You risked my financial future. Do you even realize how serious this is?" He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "You're making me out to be some villain. I did what I had to do." "No, Daniel. You did what was easy." I walked past him, grabbing my laptop. I had already taken the first steps, opened a new bank account, set up alerts to track every cent, and begun gathering financial documents proving I had no clue what he was up to. But I wasn't done. Daniel had spent years lying to me. Now I wanted to know everything. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his things. I checked his desk, his drawers, his email, and what I found made my blood turn to ice. A series of emails from the IRS, not just from the past few months, but years. Daniel had been under investigation for tax fraud. And worse, he had known all along. I felt sick. This wasn't just about debt. He had lied on our tax filings. I stormed into the bedroom, my fury now a burning inferno. "Daniel, wake up." He groggily sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What?" I threw the stack of emails onto the bed. "Explain this." His face drained of color. "Where did you get those?" "That's what you're worried about? Not the fact that you've been committing fraud." He sat up, suddenly defensive. "It's not like that." "Oh, really?" "Because these emails say otherwise." I could see him scrambling for an excuse, but I was done listening. "I'm filing for innocent spouse relief," I said coldly. "And if the IRS asks, I'll tell them everything." His jaw clenched. "You wouldn't." I met his gaze, my voice like steel. "Try me." For the first time, Daniel looked genuinely afraid. Daniel sat frozen, his face pale as he stared at the pile of IRS emails I had thrown in front of him. His arrogance, his excuses, all of it vanished. He knew I had him. "You went through my stuff," he finally muttered, his voice shaking with barely contained anger. I crossed my arms, refusing to back down. "You stole from me. You lied to me. You risked my financial future without a second thought. And now you're mad that I found out the truth." He clenched his fists. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "You've been under investigation for years, Daniel. Years. And instead of coming clean, you just kept digging yourself deeper, hoping I'd never find out." He let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. "What was I supposed to do? Tell you everything so you could judge me? So you could leave me?" I took a slow, steady breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I would have helped you, Daniel, if you had been honest. But instead, you stole from me." He flinched at the word stole. "Good. He should." I grabbed my phone and pulled up the lawyer's number. "I'm calling Miss Caldwell first thing in the morning. I'm filing for innocent spouse relief. You're on your own." Daniel's eyes widened in horror. "You can't do that." I lifted an eyebrow. "Watch me." His panic was instant. "If you do that, they'll come after me harder. I won't have a way out." I shrugged. "Not my problem." His face twisted in desperation. "Please, baby. Don't do this. We can fix it together." I stared at him, my heart breaking and my fury rising all at once. "You should have thought about that before you drained my account." I didn't wait. I called Miss Caldwell at 9 a.m. sharp. She listened as I laid out everything I had discovered. The missing money, the hidden tax fraud, the IRS investigation. I was done protecting Daniel. "I'll file the innocent spouse claim immediately," she assured me. "We'll separate your finances legally, and I'll make sure the IRS knows you had no part in his fraud." I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in days. For the first time, I was protecting myself. That afternoon, I went to the bank and moved all my remaining funds into my new personal account. I also put a freeze on our joint credit cards and set up fraud alerts. When I got home, Daniel was waiting for me, his face full of barely contained rage. "You locked me out of the accounts?" he demanded. I didn't even blink. "Yes," he scoffed, running a hand through his hair. "You're really doing this to me?" "No, Daniel. You did this to yourself." His breathing was heavy, his hands clenched into fists. Then, suddenly, his expression shifted. The anger melted into fake remorse. "Listen, I know I messed up," he said, his voice softer now. "But if we work together, we can fix this. I can get the money back. I can make this right." I shook my head. "It's too late, Daniel." And then, before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from his face. It was the IRS. I watched as he swallowed hard, his fingers trembling as he picked up. Hello." The room was silent as I listened to one side of the conversation. "Wait, what? No, that can't be right. I don't have that kind of money." My stomach twisted. Whatever they were saying was worse than even he expected. Then, suddenly, his face contorted in pure terror. "Fraud charges." My breath caught. I hadn't expected that. He turned to me, his eyes wild with panic. "They're saying." I cut him off. I heard, and I felt nothing. For years, I had put Daniel first. I had trusted him, believed in him, loved him. But now, he was just a liar paying the price for his own greed. I turned away as he continued stammering into the phone, his world collapsing around him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The moment I heard the words fraud charges, something inside me shifted. The fear, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it all faded into something stronger. Relief. For so long, I had been trapped in the illusion of a marriage built on trust, believing Daniel and I were partners. But now I saw the truth. I had been nothing more than a safety net to him, a source of stability while he dug himself deeper into his own mess. Daniel stood there, phone pressed against his ear, stammering incoherently as the IRS agent on the other end laid out his reality. His hands trembled, his face ghostly pale. He barely even looked at me anymore because he knew. He had lost control. I didn't stay to hear the rest of the call. I had better things to do. I walked into our bedroom and grabbed the suitcase from the closet. With calm, deliberate movements, I started packing my things. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I was leaving. By the time Daniel hung up the phone, I was already zipping my bag shut. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice hoarse, like he had just realized what was happening. I didn't even glance at him. "What does it look like?" Panic flashed in his eyes. No, you're not leaving. We can figure this out." I laughed, shaking my head. Figure this out? You mean, you'll find another way to use me as your personal piggy bank while you run from the consequences? No, Daniel. I'm done being your safety net. He stepped forward, desperation dripping from his every move. Please, baby. I know I messed up, but I love you. I swear I'll fix this. I zipped my suitcase the rest of the way, and finally met his eyes. You don't love me, Daniel. You love what I could do for you. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He knew I was right. I walked past him, my heart pounding with every step, but I wasn't scared anymore. I was in control now. Before I left, I made one last stop, the bank. I sat with the bank representative and formally removed Daniel's name from everything he had access to. I canceled our joint accounts, had my credit checked for fraudulent activity, and placed fraud alerts on everything in my name. Then I went a step further. At my lawyer's office, Ms. Caldwell helped me draft a formal statement to the IRS. I gave them everything. The emails, the proof of his lies, the way he drained my savings without my consent. By the time I was done, Daniel wasn't just facing an audit. He was now under full-fledged investigation. And there wasn't a single thing he could do to stop it. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the best of me. His voice was shaking. "They're coming after me," he whispered, like he was afraid someone would hear. I raised an eyebrow. "I know." He exhaled sharply. "You told them everything, didn't you?" "Of course I did." Silence. Then the sound of something crashing in the background, probably one of his many tantrums. He wasn't used to being held accountable. "They're saying I could go to jail," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I let that sink in. "Good. Then I suggest you start preparing for it," I said, my tone ice cold. He let out a desperate, pathetic laugh. "Come on, you don't really want me in prison, do you?" I thought about it for a second. "I don't care what happens to you, Daniel. That's not my problem anymore." I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. 2 months later, Daniel was officially charged with tax fraud and financial misconduct. The case made local news. His employer fired him. His reputation was ruined. And me? I thrived. I moved into my own apartment, free of all the stress and financial burden he had placed on me. I reconnected with friends I had lost while being consumed by his drama. I focused on my own goals, my own happiness. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. And the best part? I got every penny back. With my lawyer's help, I filed for financial restitution. The court ordered Daniel to repay every dollar he had stolen from our account. Of course, with his life in shambles, it would take him years, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I didn't care about the money. I had already won. Because in the end, the real revenge wasn't watching Daniel suffer. It was watching myself finally be free. As I stood in my new apartment, looking out at the city's skyline, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. No more sleepless nights wondering what Daniel was hiding. No more stress over finances I had no control over. No more lies. Daniel had dug his own grave, and in the end, karma did all the work for me. His fraud, his arrogance, his theft, it had all caught up with him. And while he faced the consequences of his actions, I was free to rebuild my life on my own terms. I learned the hard way that trust is not just about love, it's about actions. It's about honesty. And if someone shows you who they are, believe them. I had ignored the red flags, excused the lies, and convinced myself that marriage meant loyalty even when that loyalty was one-sided. Never again. Now every dollar I earn, every step I take, and every decision I make is for me. I am no longer someone's safety net. I am no longer tied to a man who saw me as his personal bank. I am free. They say revenge is sweet, but I've learned something even better. Nothing tastes sweeter than walking away and never looking back.